coming back with Robbie Britton. Bring him into the lab and let's get to know the young man. Robbie, Rich, Chris, Robbie, Rich. We got John and Marty coming back here. What's up, Robbie Britton?
Hello. And the audio works right now. That's the main worry at this point.
I think we have you working there. We got Johnny coming back here. What's shaking, Robbie? Where are you joining us from today? You were joining us from London.
No, I'm from London, but I'm joining you from Italy. So ironically, my name is Britton, but here in Italy they pronounce it Brighton. So I just want to fit in and not cause any drama.
There you go. So Robbie is let me get my camera feed here. So guys, Marty, Rich, Johnny. Robbie is a professional endurance coach since 2000, specializing in ultra distance running and cycling. He's the author of 1001 Running Tips, the essential runner guide, a must read for anyone serious about running. We're going to get that for John Anderson coming up here. He holds the British 24-hour record, covering an incredible 172 miles in one day. For all my American friends, do the math. 172 miles in one day. He represented Great Britain and North Ireland in a 24-hour race, earning third place at the World and European Championships. He's now part of the management team for British Athletics 24-hour team, sharing his experience and expertise in endurance science. Rich Ingram, coming to you, brother. When you said, hey, I got somebody for the show, and you're like, I got somebody for the show. And you're like, we got to get Robbie on the show. Richie, in a sentence or less, why do we have Robbie Britton on the show today?
This guy represents everything there is about endurance. Like I said, Robbie showed me that video of when he crossed the 24-hour line and just fell over. I don't know. I want to know exactly how do we train to our minds to get to that point?
Yeah.
And Robbie is the pinnacle of that. I love this guy. We met out in Leadville at the hostel out there and just created a really tight bond. And I remember seeing Rob, I was at mile 50 and Robbie was 60 miles, 20 miles ahead of me. And I hadn't even reached the hardest part. And he was coming downhill and I didn't want to get in his race because correct me if I'm wrong, Rob, I think you were in fifth or fourth around then.
Six at that point.
Six. And he stops and he gives me a hug and he's like, dude is just sheer joy out there crushing it and still takes time for his pals. I'm happy to have you on, Robbie.
That's awesome. So Jimmy, you're having a problem with my camera right now here. So if you can move my camera for me, that would be awesome. Robbie, so when Richie told you to join the show, or asked you to join the show, what got you thinking? No, not what got you thinking. You got yourself here today. You're like, yeah, I want to join the show with these guys. When you hear me talk about 270 some odd miles you ran, is that normal for you? Is that an average day, or was that a massive accomplishment for you when you accomplished that?
That was a pretty good day. In terms of days of life, it's probably one of the best days. Yeah, no, it's not an average day for sure. It's a day that brings a lot of joy to me, but also took a lot away. I think every time you run a 24-hour race, which is you're going around in one circle the whole time, it probably takes a couple of years off your life. But those years at the end that you're not too fussed about, rather than the ones that you're living at the moment. So yeah, it's one of my best days. Yeah, I'm coming up to a wedding anniversary, and I'll probably put it on a par, maybe a little bit better. My wife wouldn't mind that, I don't think.
Robbie, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Not to put you on the spot, but about a month ago, somebody bested you, right?
Yeah. I was going to put it in there. Someone beat my record.
Are you going to go back? Yeah, I figured you were. Okay.
He's just looking after it for me for a while.
There we go. I like that. That's great perspective.
That's awesome. Johnny, throw something here. I'm trying to get my camera sorted out. So I'm going to let you guys just go with it here for a quick second here. I got a camera problem here with you guys here. So I'm going to let you guys keep going with it. I get my camera sorted out here. So bear with me for a second here.
Yeah, Robbie, what you're describing about having this day, in my career, I've had multiple, I guess you'd say, experiences like you're talking about. Obviously, it's not a 24-hour stint for me. In many cases, it was a really good set of squats or a really good event and for me, in my mind, and in my first book, I actually talk about I call it a portal. It's all of a sudden as I get really deep into pain, as my brain starts helping me with the natural painkillers to get through it, it's almost like everything quiets down, slows down, and I envision this little portal, this little hole in time and I just dive through it. And when I get in there, I don't want it to end. The pain is gone. It's slow. It feels good. And I always hit way go beyond my personal best or whatever I'm doing. And I can't wait to get back there. So I guess the question is, when you're talking about your experience of getting into that place, for me, it's what I live for in terms of my training, to get back into that place. Talk about, do you have a place like that? Did that 24 hours give you something along those lines?
Yeah, similar. For a 24-hour race, the pain is inevitable. And what you do in that moment of pain or those hours of pain is up to you. And I think I try to frame it in a positive light. So when it gets to, when you've been running for 12 hours and you've got 12 more hours of running to go, like your legs hurt. You've been running for 12 hours. They're supposed to hurt. Everything hurts at some point. And if you fear that pain coming up, you're like, oh, I'm really worried about it. It's going to slow me down. Then it becomes a negative situation for you. Whereas I look at that pain as an opportunity. Like when I'm going to try and break a record, if I'm in a race like a world champs, when it starts getting painful, I look forward to it, because that's the time where anyone can run well when they feel good. But the man or the woman who moves best when they're in that world of pain, or who squats heaviest when actually that moment when every fiber of your body is telling you to quit, that's the opportunity. That's a privilege to get to that point, because most people never even get to that.
Yes. And I'm sorry to interrupt, but one of the ways I look at it is when I push myself and I'm trying to get to that point, all that distance and the pain and the anguish that I've gone through is I don't want to let that go to waste. So I remind myself that, hey, I put myself through X to get here. It makes it easier for me to keep going. It sounds like that's the same for you. Yeah.
I just put a big smile on my face. I don't know if that works with a squat. I don't lift that heavy, as you can probably. But no, I remind myself this is what I've come for. Yes, I love the easy miles. I love seeing a friend on the trail. Like, all of this stuff is brilliant. But the bit that I've signed up for, if I wanted, I could have stuck to 5K. I could have stuck to marathons and stuff like that. But I'm there for the moment where it sucks, like, quite heavily. And I want to be in that bit and be like, you know what, this is why I'm here. This is what I wanted to find my limits. And yeah, I'm somewhere around there. Sometimes you go over them a little bit, but the joy of the ultra stuff is that it's never the end of the story. Like, often you can have, like, just before I'd seen Rich at Leadville, we're coming up the back of Hope and it's hot, and you're going up to, I have to do it in feet, 3,800 meters, which is about 15, 16 feet, maybe higher than that. And then I was in a bad place. I thought my race was over. I thought I'd gone too hard. I pop over the top. Suddenly there's a bunch of llamas at a checkpoint, which I also stopped to say hello to on the way up. You're a good man, Rich, but those llamas also, they carried all the food for us. So I had to show my love for those.
You got to give them some love.
And then 10 minutes later, I'm having a great time. I've seen a friend who's having a good race. That brings me a lot of joy. It distracts a little bit from the pain in my legs, but the whole descent in other people, we had a little gang of us, and I got to see all of those guys. And yeah, one of the guys was right at the back, and he was like Tyler Ogg. He was giving it everything. He was inside the cutoffs by minutes from halfway. And then it just reframes what you're doing, because actually it's not that bad. Like, I'm 20 miles ahead of Rich. What am I complaining about?
You're hanging out with Keith. You're hanging out with Keith, John, Rich, and Marty here on Mornings in the Lab with Keith and friends here. Coming up at the 8:30 Eastern time hour here. We're going to see Marty Fitzip coming here in less than a minute. Rich got a question for him. We're hanging out with Robbie Britton. The guy runs 100 miles like there's no business. Richie, question for Robbie before we bring up Marty for the fit tip. Richie.
Yeah, man, I think there's a lot of people out there that look at you and they say, yeah, you're a professional athlete. This is easy for you. And I think that there's a misconception there, because it's for what you're trying to achieve and what other people may be trying to achieve. It's all relative, right? Like, it's just as difficult. And so I think there's a misconception there. So, and I know that you coach a number of athletes. Do you ever run into that? And how do you manage people at the different levels to get them to reach those goals, to get to the next level?
I think you've got to look at the demands of each event to every individual, like tackling a challenge. So Leadville, for me and you, we look at it as a 100-mile race that we're both doing. There are different challenges we're both going to face, but the very simple one is the amount of time we're working for. Like, we're both running a 100-mile race, but like, I'm running an 18-hour race. You're aiming to run a 24.5-hour race. You're running a bit more. That's a different challenge. Like, you've got to have a whole extra percent. So it's harder in that. God, Tyler's running a 4-hour race out there. Right. So if we were to look at it in the same way, even if we're looking at how hard we're working, I can afford to work a little bit harder because I'm working for less time. You've got to work a bit smarter. So straight away, I'd say it's all relative. If you were running a 17-hour race, or something, or 6, you could work as hard as I am in that race, right? If you get your nutrition right, the psychology right, the pacing right, but you're not, you're running a longer race. So you've got to be smarter in that regard. So I think it's just looking not just at like the kind of the snapshot, the 100 miles, the 50 miles, the marathon. Like a marathon for Kelvin Kipton, who's passed away, unfortunately, was just over 2 hours. That's a 2-hour run. If you're running your first marathon, it's taking you 5.5 hours. Yes, you may have worked a little less, a little easier in training than Kelvin did. You may have been genetically less gifted and not born in the Rift Valley in Kenya, but you're also going to run for 2.5 amount of hours longer. So it's a different challenge. So it's just making sure that whatever challenge you're stepping up to, you appreciate it in your own respect, in your own regard, rather than just taking a snapshot and thinking, well, like Bob did this and this is how long it took him. And the same goes to any kind of walk of life. A challenge is like a task is different for any people. If I go to the supermarket, getting something off the top shelf, it's a lot harder for me than it is for you, Rich, because I'm about shorter. It's a different challenge.
You're hanging out with Robbie Britton, Phyllis, Rich Ingram, C. Marty Fit, John Anderson. We're getting up with the fit tip. Marty's got something for you guys to think about. We're going to come back, deep dive, continue the conversation. Endurance as a mindset. Marty, you're up, my brother.